My name's Pete English, and this is my brother Capel. We're the guys that founded Plinker Systems. We're out of Atlanta and have been shooting for quite some time. We grew up in a rural area in Georgia, in a town that's so small both city limit signs are on the same 4x4 post. So what we tell people, there are two seasons where we grew up. There's football season and there's spring practice. And in between that, you shoot. And so we grew up shooting quite a bit. Now we live in Atlanta, and if you shoot, you go to jail. So things have changed quite a bit. But what we have done and what we'd like to introduce to you guys today is a new shooting sport that we've come up with, and it's called the Sport of Plinker. So what we have found is that competitive action shooting, if you will, has been around for a long time. Been around for a very long time. And what most competitive shooters, at least in the South that we find, is they get introduced to competitive shooting through their local range. Maybe they were born in a rural area and moved to the city, but for the most part, they get introduced at their local range. What we have done earlier this week, and I know that we've talked to a handful of you, is come up with a sport that we're centering an electronic plate rack around this sport. And the goals that we've come up with, first and foremost, is we're trying to introduce more people to shooting. And I didn't say we're trying to introduce more people to competitive shooting, because competitive shooters are already involved with shooting sports. So we're trying to get new people involved with shooting. That's number one. Number two, we're trying to get law enforcement more involved with shooting. What we've heard anywhere we travel is that only 10% of law enforcement officers are actually shooters. The other 90% have to shoot because they have to qualify a couple of times a year, and they get bored to death going to an indoor shooting range and shoot paper targets. So they don't want to shoot. So if we had a platform that would allow them to enjoy shooting, then there are benefits for both the agency, the officer, and the range. And then lastly, the Sport of Plinker and the electronic plate rack should be a revenue generating proposition for a range owner, because a range owner is in business to stay in business. And if we can help them make money, then we can all be successful. From the perspective of casual shooters getting involved at a range, there's several challenges. A typical customer at a range goes to a range maybe 2 or 3 times a year. They shoot 1 box of ammo and they leave. And that's it. That's the revenue that the range is going to get from that one shooter. Okay? Most of the shooters that go to a range are totally unaware of shooting sports. I mean, if they only go 2 or 3 times a year, they may never know about shooting sports. And the ones that do find out about competitive shooting or action shooting are really intimidated. Because if they've never been before, and the first time they go, they see all these gunslingers running and moving and coming up and shooting crazy things. They're very intimidated, and they may not come back. So that's a challenge that these both the shooting sports and the indoor ranges are facing. However, there are benefits, there are many benefits for an indoor range. Number one, if shooting is fun, then the customer comes back. They come back more often, they bring their friends, they buy more stuff, whether it's guns, ammo, or accessories, and they also become what we call engaged shooters and Second Amendment supporters. Whether they're left or right, if they're shooters, they generally support the right to bear arms. From the law enforcement perspective, if we can encourage officers to shoot, then we're doing something well. One of the challenges that we have right now is actually getting them to practice regularly. We talked a minute ago about shooting paper targets is very boring. Therefore, if they have to qualify, then they have to shoot, and they don't want to. Okay? They only have to qualify a couple of times a year, which means they don't have to shoot very much. If we can change that mentality and get them back, then we can get more people into shooting sports. And lastly, at least from a challenge perspective, if they're not gun people and they're bored shooting paper targets, they're certainly not going to tell anybody else to go to a range and shoot. There are benefits, however. Benefits to the officers include having fun, handling skills. As you'll see just a minute in the demo, shooting at the steel targets is much more challenging than shooting at paper targets. Okay? There are decision-making things that have to happen from an officer's perspective. Today, the qualification is on paper. It would be really neat if we could have something to do with a totally different qualification perspective. If they could use something that analytically measures what they're doing, very much like the scoring system that we'll introduce, then there could be something that would be very beneficial to both the agency and the officer. We do feel like that from an agency perspective, if the officers are trained better, then it's going to help the entire agency. We feel like that engaged officers also become a more tight unit, if you will. If we could get officers to shoot and shoot more often, and even have an officers bowling league, then I think it would help everything. From a revenue perspective of the range operator, historically, indoor shooting sports haven't been a profit center for most ranges because it takes a paid staff to set up an IDPA match or volunteers that may or may not show up. So it's employee or human resources intensive. The space. Some ranges have to close down an entire bay to set up a competitive shooting match, thereby taking lanes from the revenue perspective. As we talked about a while ago, only a few of the customers are even going to consider competitive shooting, whether it's IDPA or IPSC or anything like that. And then there's limited revenue growth. Most of these ranges are willing to host matches at a slow time during the week, Wednesday nights, if you will. 14 people show up. They charge $10 a shot, so the range is making $140, which may or may not pay for the air conditioning that night. It'd be pretty neat if we could have a match that would last an entire week, and we could have 100 people show up over the course of a week. From a revenue perspective, the benefits to the range owner are more frequent visits. If it's fun, they come back more than 2 or 3 times a year. They bring their friends and their family. They pay premium range time to shoot the Plinker system. We have found that ammo sales, and I can't really quantify this other than get feedback from range owners, but they are doubling their ammunition sales because people are having a whole lot more fun than shooting 1 box at a paper target and going home. With the software and the system that you'll see in just a second, we have the facility to allow matches to extend over a period of time, whether it be days or weeks, or also geographically, because we have the ability to host matches that can be shot in different cities. We also have the ability to have one range compete against another range if you wanted to do that. This is an aside, it's not even part of the presentation, but we had a guy from the 4-H club come up, I think it was yesterday, and hey, can we put this thing together so that all the 4-Hers out there could compete on a national basis? Thought about it for a second, said, yeah, we just have to have a Plinker system all over the place, which would be a good thing for us. But so we do have the facility of doing that. I met with the NRA guys this morning to try to talk about something just like that. Training classes. As you'll see in a second, we have a tremendous opportunity for training using the Plinker target system because of the way that you can transition from target to target as opposed to shooting static targets. And then special corporate events. What we've seen is many of the range owners will have corporate events where they'll have 10 or 15 or 20 people come in from some company. They'll spend the first part of the afternoon teaching the people that have never shot how to shoot, and then later on in the afternoon they roll the Plinker system in, and then people start getting their wallets out and laying money down and betting on this thing. Of course, the ammo sales go through the roof, and the range owner is very happy about that. And then enhanced law enforcement training. We've met with several law enforcement, federal people that are talking about using some creative ways of maybe using this sort of thing that we never thought of. But we really feel like there's a training avenue there that we haven't explored. Now, we're going to introduce the Sport of Plinker and the electronic plate rack and what we call the Internet of Things, because we've incorporated the Sport of Plinker, the shooting steel targets indoors. We've incorporated that with the Internet, which makes it really neat from being able to have a shooting system that is scalable, basically unlimitedly scalable. So I think, Capel, if you're ready to do that, we'll
yeah.
get up here.
Let's take it. This is a 1-minute video. Some of you may have seen it, but just so you know what we're talking about. The electronic plate rack, it has lasers in the base of the unit that indicate the target that you are to engage, and the game determines how long the lights stay on. So you get that feedback. You get both an audible and a visible feedback. People love shooting steel because they can hear it. But the way that the target system works is that when you hit the plate, the light goes out. So you get immediate feedback on how you're doing. The system is designed for 22 long rifle and up to 45. Although we have shot it with long rifle at longer distances. For most indoor shooting ranges, we're not talking about using it for long rifle because shooting that with an AR would not be good. The SPAL management is very difficult to handle with rifles and the high velocity. But you can see here he's logging into the tablet, selecting the game that he wants to run, and then you'll see an all flash. That's the signal to start. So you start in a low ready position or in the holster, and then draw and start engaging the targets. So that's just a quick video of it, and we'll talk a little bit about what the target system is made of. So as you can see from the video, there are 9 AR-500 steel plates with lasers in the base and impact sensors on the back. There's a tablet computer that talks wirelessly to the target system through a radio frequency, and then it also talks to the Wi-Fi network. So we send a game command down to the target system, and it runs through it while the shooter shoots, and then we get the results back, and they get uploaded to the internet via a Wi-Fi link. Now the website, shootplinker.com, is the shooter's website. This is where the shooters can go and create an account, so when they log into the tablet, all their information and their shooting results are stored for them. So this is what the home page or the My Plinker account page looks like. You can see you can go in and change your profile. You can edit your personal results. It's a secure web portal, which means that we can scale it literally nationwide. We have social media integration built in, so literally from when you go look at your results, you can post them to Facebook immediately. When you post them to Facebook, not only does it show up in the shooter's timeline, but it checks in at that local range. So the post says, you know, John Doe shot this score at sharpshooter's range, and it will show up in the range's Facebook timeline as well. So we're doing everything we can to help promote the sport as well as the range itself. And as a lot of people are aware, there's a lot of shooting activity and a lot of stuff on Facebook with regards to that. So we're trying to leverage that to get the word out. This portal lets you manage your personal results as well as match results. So when you participate in a match, you can see what your match results are. On the range administrative side, the web portal allows the range operator to manage statistics about their range. How many people have shot? Who's their most frequent shooter? What's my average number of strings per day? Things of that nature. It also allows them to manage and administer the matches that they run. So they can set up a match to run for a week or for a month or for a day, and they can add shooters to it. It's sort of self-service so that the range does not have to have staff telling people what they need to do. Once somebody understands how the system works, they can go to their match, or go to their local range, shoot the match and leave, and the range does not have to dedicate staff to running it like you would a typical action pistol match. And then, as Pete mentioned earlier, scalability. We're working on the capabilities to do all sorts of different matches on a local, state, and national level, as well as a personal level. So you'll be able to create a match, and you can have your brother-in-law in Kansas City shoot the match, and a friend of a friend in Dallas shoot the same match, and see your own results there. So this is really how we're leveraging the internet with the shooting sports. So we're trying to attract a younger generation of shooter into the shooting sports by giving them the ability to integrate the Internet of Things, if you will, into their shooting. So what we're really trying to do is trying to get more people involved in the shooting sports, trying to encourage law enforcement professionals to train more, and we're trying to create a system, a target system that will help the range operators generate revenue, because in the 12 years that I've been involved in the competitive shooting sports, what I've seen is that the new shooters are coming from the ranges where we hold matches. And it's been quite interesting to see. In Atlanta, we started with one range that had an action pistol match, and I noticed that all of the new shooters coming to the outdoor matches were coming from that range. So we went to another range and we said, hey, we'd like to run a match here. And we provided the volunteers, and sure enough, the next outdoor match we had, we started seeing new shooters coming from those two ranges. And we built it to over a dozen indoor ranges in Atlanta holding matches. And our outdoor match attendance went from 30 shooters a month to over 100. And so I ran the Georgia State IDPA match for 10 years, and we created the third largest match in the nation in Atlanta. And so what we saw was this is how people get introduced into the shooting sports, and we believe that using this target system, the range operators can generate revenue, will expose more casual shooters to the shooting sports. When that happens, of course, they're going to buy more guns, more ammo, more accessories, and the industry as a whole grows. That's all we had to present. Any questions? Shoot.
Is it only indoor?
It will work outdoors, okay? The challenge that you have is that lasers don't work in the sunlight, so it has to be in the shade. And then it wasn't designed to be weatherproof, so in a pouring rain, we haven't really designed it to work, submerged, if you will. We've used it successfully, like at last year's, our club championship match last year, we had it outdoors, and we just built some shade over the top of it, and we used it as a way to generate revenue for the club. So $1 a string, people would come in and shoot and compete.
So the lasers are projected from the base?
From the base of the unit, sure. Sure, in fact, I will show you. So this is a CAD model of the system. And if you look down here in the base, you can see down here in the bottom, you can see where the lasers are, okay? So there's a computer that sits underneath this top cover right here. So there are wires that go to the lasers and a wire that goes up to sensors in the back.
In your demo here, the target's illuminated left to right, top to bottom. It sporadically move around?
That's one pattern, okay? We have about a half a dozen different patterns. We could create more, but it becomes overwhelming at some point.
No, I guess
so
it was in the demo.
Actually, that video is quite old, and some things have changed since we did that video. So, for example, we have a game now we call Lights Out, where they all light up, and as you shoot them, they go out. So it's more like a traditional plate rack where the plates fall over, and so that's one game. And then now, the video didn't show it, but Now, even when you're shooting the other game patterns, when you hit the plate, the light goes out. So you get both a visual and an acoustic feedback.
So I think to answer your question, yes, there are multiple games, and yes, we can create new games. And some people get really creative. We've seen some ranges where you saw the 9 targets, or they present the 9 targets. They've come up with games which has nothing to do with us, where they'll load 3 rounds in the first magazine and force a reload because it makes it more creative.
Right. So and that works toward training as well. So you can download your first mag to 3 rounds, shoot 3, reload, shoot 3, reload. There's and we get ideas all the time. People come back to us. They ask quite frequently, why don't we do a random game? And so the answer, the reason we haven't done that in the competition environment is my random is different from your random, you know, and so therefore people don't like that.
I mean, it's like drawing a horse with a bull in the rodeo. My bull wasn't as tough as your bull. I mean,
Yeah, and you know what is, at least in rodeo, people don't complain.
Well, the challenge with that is we've got some range operators. What they do is they allow you to shoot it as many times as you want, and they take the money and they put it in the pool, and the house takes some percentage, say 50%, and they split the rest of it up. Well, when they do that, having a random game, people don't like that.
even if it wasn't from the competitive side, the random, you know, it improves your thinking and shooting skills.
Absolutely.
You know, even if you're going from top left to bottom right, I mean, you're having to engage multiple targets and follow the pattern.
We've actually done that, and here's how you do it. The shooter stands at the line, and his buddy selects the game, so he doesn't know when it starts what game is going to be there. But you're right. So another example that we've been asked about is like double tap. So you don't get credit for hitting that target unless you shoot it twice. And so we've got lots of ideas coming down the pipe, and we're working on them. The company's about 14 months old, so we're really just getting off the ground, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more of that coming.
Physically, what's the size of it?
It's when you take some of the spall guards, so we've done a lot of engineering to manage the spall. So if you take the spall guards off, it will roll through a 36-inch door. So it's about 38, 40 inches wide, so it'll go through any shooting lane, but to get it through the door, you have to take the spall guards off.
We found that most doors at most gun ranges are 3 feet wide. So part of the whole design was if a range operator wants to move the target system from bay 1 to bay 2 or to a utility room, that it will fit through any door, and he can roll it without taking the trunks off. You could take the trunks off if you wanted to, but it would take two grown men.
Yeah, I mean, it can be disassembled, but you can move it. The idea is so it can be moved in and out of the range.
You can absolutely take it apart. It's not welded together per se, but the idea is to be able to move it without having a whole lot of work involved.
Yeah, and you can see it's got wheels on it. So you can roll it around and lock the casters, and then it will sit up there.
Power source?
It uses an RC battery. So the target system is very low power. So you just use a little 7-volt RC battery.
Remote control car battery, toy.
Yeah, and so you can you change it once a day. The battery will last about 2 days, but we recommend that you change it every morning, just to standard operating procedure, and put it on the charger overnight. The tablet itself that mounts in the booth with the shooter, just run power down to keep it charged all the time.
Installed is about $12,000, and that's a one-time price. If a range elects to have the optional support and maintenance on year 2, 3, 4 through N, then it's $1,800 a year. So for a range operator, it's a $12,000 cost one time, and then $1,800 a year.
So depending on your business model, and we've had a number of range operators sort of go through our ROI calculator, return on investment calculator. we've seen anywhere from 3.5 to 13 months return on investment. So
Using their numbers.
we feel like, I mean, if they can't make money with it, obviously we don't want them to buy it, because that doesn't help us. It only gives us a black eye. So
Your test market fall in Atlanta?
We've been lucky enough to have about 30 ranges in Atlanta, so we have quite a few shooters in Atlanta and quite a few ranges to get a lot of opinions. I mean, anybody that sees it's got an opinion, and they'll voice it.
yeah, it's been really good feedback. We've worked closely with a number of them, and you know, they're concerned about because we're shooting steel indoors, and there's this perception that you can't shoot steel indoors. And the reality is that you can if the target system is designed correctly. And so that's where all the plates are angled at a 20 degree from vertical. And when a bullet hits the steel plate, it fragments. Okay, that's called spall. And so about 98% of the spall is directed downward. But some of it will go up, and some of it will go to the sides. And you will occasionally even get a small piece that will come back and hit the shooter. If it hits your clothes, you won't even feel it. If it hits your skin, it's like sand at the beach on a windy day. So it's impossible to control 100% of the spall unless you go with frangible ammo. Yeah, so jacketed ammo. Some ranges require, I mean, there are ranges around that do shoot steel indoors and they require frangible. Frangible is generally more expensive, although we've talked to a few range operators this week that have said they're buying frangible at the same price. Not the sale price of lead ammo, but the standard price of, and so that's interesting. Generally, it's $2 or $3 a box more expensive, and they don't want to pass that cost on to their customers. So, and you can understand that.
But there's no requirement from our perspective. You can shoot jacketed ammo. You know, what we're not promoting is shooting long rifles. You could shoot a 22 because of the multiple velocity, but we're not promoting shooting long rifles at the target.
Yeah, and certainly not green tip. I mean, a 223 at 12 yards would go right through that plate and tear it up. So that's not. So it's pistol caliber only unless under certain controlled circumstances. Like we took it and ran it down range at 25 yards and shot it with an AR using 300 blackout subsonic, and it was a lot of fun. But the muzzle velocity times the bullet weight, or the power factor, was equal to that of a handgun, so it was not a concern.
You mentioned the $1,800 a year maintenance.
What the maintenance includes is lasers going out, sensors going out. There are 2 computers in the system, so computers break. There's new software that comes out, and there's technical support. So sometimes you'll find a range will have turnover employees that don't know exactly, well, how do you plug up the battery? So the most frequent call we get is, it stopped working. The most frequent answer we give is, did you change the battery? The next most frequent comment is, no. Change the battery, everything works again. So I guess hopefully that answered your question. There's a lot of technology behind it. There's a lot of technology that changes, and we are shooting something with ammunition all day long. Sooner or later, something will probably break. People ask, how many rounds can you shoot at a target before you have to replace the target? It's AR 500. People are telling us 300, 400,000 rounds. Obviously, we have never shot one 400,000 rounds to find out the answer. But my guess is if were you to shoot it with 22, you probably never do anything with it.
They're all green?
They're all green.
They're green, and they're green on purpose, because if you want to shoot with a red dot, we didn't want to confuse the shooter. We've actually had, I've got a buddy who's a former commander of the Georgia State Patrol SWAT team, and what he wanted to have red and green lasers so that he could do decision making. And so, His argument was that more and more law enforcement agencies are being required from a liability perspective to train their agents on decision making, shoot, don't shoot. And so he wanted to be able to say, throw up a red dot to shoot and a green dot not to shoot. And we're like, well, that's interesting, but it doesn't do that today. And so, there, you know, lots of things coming down the pipe in terms of what we're thinking about, in terms of doing that. But the reason that the lasers are green is because there's a lot of red dot pistols out there, and we didn't want to confuse the shooter. But on the
much more visible in the daytime than red.
The green is?
Well, it's a laser. We could put pink ones up there. You know, what we don't have right now is dual laser per target.
Yeah.
That may happen. One of the challenges you get into when you start messing around with lasers is the intensity of the laser, and then you start having to have, you have to be licensed for using lasers, and then it gets really expensive really fast to do that.
Anything over 5 milliwatt laser has to be approved by the FDA. Well, and back to your point about green, that's one of the reasons that we chose green, because it does show up better in bright light. And so you're right.
We had a range that was testing the system, and a brand new system looks really good. It's a good looking piece of steel, and it was manufactured. The manufacturing company is 9001 ISO certification. So the lines are just perfect. It's very accurate. It's a good looking piece of steel. And then you start shooting it, and after about 5,000 rounds, you've just shot it all to be doggone, and you know, it's lead all over the place and not pretty anymore. And we're the only ones that think it's pretty. But so he wanted to say, he said, look, here's what I want to do. I want to paint the targets fluorescent. I want to put black lights in a certain set of lights in the range, and we want to shoot it at night with night scopes.
Turn the lights out and shoot.
Yeah, shoot black light with night scopes.
Well, not night scope, just
Have at it.
just night sights.
Night sights, I'm sorry, night sights. And hey, look, it's steel. Paint it. 1,000 rounds from now, it's going to be steel again. So I thought that's pretty creative. All righty.
Okay, well, thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks a lot.